Hey, this is Wicked Spursy. Mike and Steve, no Dave again, but we do have a very special guest to fill in for him. But before we get to that, I would like to ask you, Mike, it's not the question that I'm really dying to ask, but it is a good question, and that's, how are you? It's been a
No,
while.
I'm
I haven't seen you in about a day.
yeah, I mean about 24 hours or so. Um I'm flying high, man. Yesterday the downer to start our day. And then my wife and my daughter are down at the in-laws and visiting my parents down south. So we had Lucas and I had kind of a boys' day, which was awesome. And then later in the evening he had three matches to play. And had a number of beautiful goals. He had kind of one accidental goal, but he got into the semis and the finals of his 7v7 league, and that team is so much fun to watch. A lot of good, like young kids, good attitudes, great parents, and it was just kind of a pickup team to start. So that was what was really fun about it. And a lot of these kids had the downers from last season because they're on his regular club team. Um, but it was just so fun to watch these kids like get so excited about not just scoring goals but about winning a tournament, winning a league, and then winning the knockout rounds. um Great coaching, and I just can't thank Coach Airy enough. Like, um Lucas always says I can't understand him because he's Eastern European, but um he picks on Lucas a lot. Told him his finishing is as good as Terry Henry. And Lucas is like, Lucas
Pick
always
someone
does
else.
the, yeah, get out of my face with that. So he teases him a little bit, but it's very nice to see great coaching. The kids are all great. And I just had a great time last night. We finished the final at about 11 p.m. So, well, 10:30 probably. But it was just a good time. So I'm flying high this week, man.
Nice, nice. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Myself, it's been a pretty busy weekend as well. We celebrated my sister-in-law's 40th birthday last night. So that was a huge milestone. It was really great to get out and just be a little bit more social than normal. And today we actually picked up a new puppy who is currently napping in the other room. Her name's Echo. She's a Pomsky, very adorable, very fluffy. Our old man is not super impressed, but so we've got her right now in like one of Isaac's old pack and plays. So they're in the same room, but there is a clear barrier between them. We figure let's just get used to keeping them in the same place without the fear of, one big dog trying to rip the little puppy to shreds.
I think of, I'm just getting that visual of like the Secret Life of Pets when they bring the new dog home. If you've seen that.
Yep, I have actually. He's mellowed out a bit. He was a bit, angry at first, but has since kind of just been more like, whatever. I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, Mike, why don't you introduce our Dave replacement for the day? Think he's a man who needs no introduction, but I'll let you do it anyway.
Yeah, well, let's introduce him. So we're really excited about this for two reasons. It's always great to have other members of our podcast community, especially like one of our podcast gurus, our Godfather, dressed like the Godfather today. But also the second reason is because he has just earned uh his new brand new lily white jacket for being in the Four Timers Club, along with Brian from Rhode Island. So I really don't have to introduce this fella, but we will anyway from the Extra Inch podcast. You know him as Windy, Chris Miller. Welcome.
Hello, chaps. Very nice to be here. Really nice to hear, firstly, you gushing over Lucas's achievements, like a super proud dad. That was delightful. And then Steve just like dropping in, he's got a new puppy. That's is
Oh
so
yeah,
nice. That's amazing news.
my
Um,
toddler's in love
I'm
right now.
sure, like full heart eyes emoji, no doubt.
Oh yeah. just like sitting in the pack and play with her, like, let's play together. It's like you hated that thing when you were a baby and now you want to be in it. All right.
So
Whatever,
nice.
kid.
Yeah. Well, I've just got home from a family gathering. We were at my wife's parents'. So I had my 40th birthday a fortnight ago. So we were belatedly celebrating
Very
that.
nice.
And my
Excellent.
wife's
Happy
birthday
birthday.
and my future brother-in-law's birthday as well. So yeah, it's been a nice time. And we got home and unfortunately our dog had thrown up on the carpet. So that's what we came home to. But he was very excited to see us. So we just whipped him out for a quick walk before I jumped on the pod. So hence I was kind of dashing in at the last second with no time to spare.
Well, you've done a great job, and we have to thank your lovely bride for allowing us to have you for this time that we get to talk. I know your time is precious with family and with all the other engagements you have, and we really thank you for being here.
Anytime, honestly, it's a pleasure.
So
So we had yeah,
we had a
go ahead,
match.
Steve. I'll
Yeah.
let you do it.
So
We had a
great
match
minds
to
think
talk about.
alike, or at least,
Yeah.
minds that have shared in a miserable experience think alike. We did play yesterday. There was a match. Some played a little bit more enthusiastically than most, uh,
That
but
would
it
be Pedro
certainly was
Neto.
something. So, where do we want to start with that, man?
I'd like to start with lineups because we I think we talked about it, Steve, maybe on our WhatsApp, maybe last week, probably, possibly, but I was hoping that Ange would come out and do something a little bit braver, maybe something a little bit different, and possibly using Dragushin as a center back and sliding Mickey out to the left side. I know that Mickey has kind of played that position a little bit in a past life, or at least something similar to it. Um, we know that he can carry the ball. He doesn't particularly adept at it, but um, I think he would have been able to play that position pretty effectively. Instead, we got, Big Daddy, which, perfectly fine, um, you know, as a second or third option for me. Um, Second option in a very big emergency, which obviously we had, and we can get into why that is an emergency. Um, but on the other side, you had Emerson. Now, Emerson, I think, is a perfect example of a traditional right back. He he can't necessarily do any of the things that a Pedro Porro does, which is why Pedro Porro is shown to be a very, very important piece of this puzzle. Um, Not just through his play, but like um, because we can now see the deficiencies when he's not in there. Emerson's never going to be that guy who's going to be able to invert, carry the ball forward, put in big crosses. Um, he he's not going to be that guy. He's going to link up with Decky or anybody in the midfield. Really, I think that it was a detriment because you see guys like Destiny and you see guys like Poro who who are arriving in the box. They're able to carry the ball through the midfield. They're able to receive the ball, turn and pass, and to a greater extent on the right side with Pedro Poro, um, somebody who's able to shoot from the outside. Now I saw a couple of times where we broke through, get into the 18, and here comes Emerson up the side, and Decky decides to go another way because he sees Emerson bolting forward, and knowing that Emerson has limitations in that area, you know, it really made the day difficult, and I think that was partially to blame for the performance. I mean, outside of that, everybody else was just pretty lackluster and energyless for me. Um, Outside of Decky's beautiful finish. But Wendy, what did you think about the lineups? Did you pretty much as expected?
I think it was as expected, and that is why I was disappointed. I was hoping, like you, that he would try something different. Um, I actually am I'm less confident that Van de Ven could pull off that role on the left in the inverted role. But I do think Romero could pull off the role on the right. I think Romero receiving back to play in the inverted right back position and having some creative passing along the lines of Porro is a genuine feasible option. But then that would mean, like you say, Dragushin coming in, having never started for us before. And I get it. It's a big ask. It's a big call to make, moving your best defender and arguably one of our best players, Romero, to a different position, and then bringing in a young player who's not played much. But my issue comes from, having picked that team, having seen how the first half went, having seen our struggles with ball progression, having seen how we were really finding it hard to get past that halfway line with the ball being received by the front players in any kind of with any quality. He had to change something at half time, in my view. I felt like going out there with the same 11, just expecting things to change because you've given them a talking to, was optimistic. And, we got the early goal. So I'm thinking, great, is this going to actually work? But no, we sank back into the same pattern that the first half had seen largely. We were very vulnerable to the counter. But more importantly, we just struggled to create. We really struggled to kind of feed the ball to our creative players with any in positions where they could actually hurt them, and in an efficient way where the ball was arriving at their feet in the maximized possibilities. And I think that is due to the fullbacks. And I don't blame Emerson Royale or Ben Davis for that. I think this is, what we saw from them was their maximum capabilities in those roles. Like they are what they are. They are Ben Davis now, I think, has to be considered a centre back. I don't think he's a viable fullback, really. And Emerson
100%.
Royale, like you say, is a traditional fullback. He cannot play the inverted role. He simply doesn't have the press resistance to play the inverted role, or the creative passing or creative carrying. You have to have kind of one of the three, ideally two of the three. He doesn't have those qualities. So I was kind of frustrated, and people will say, "Well, what other option did he have? What was he meant to do?" Like you say, the only option is to bring in Dragushin and play Romero. But I genuinely think, why not play Sarr or Skip as the right back? Because most of the time when we've got the ball, they are inverting and they are playing what is essentially a central midfield profile. And in a game where we're struggling to break down the opposition too much, I felt like that was an opportunity to experiment. And as much as I think Ange is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant coach, and he will find solutions to this, he will get it right because he's fantastic. He is quite a conservative manager when it comes to team selections and substitutions, I've noticed so far. And I'm finding that a little frustrating, I must admit.
Yeah, that Sar comment is actually interesting because I do feel like he has experience playing in that role when he was out in France last season. He was kind of all over the place, so it's not like he's lacking the versatility, and that could be a relatively decent option because a lot of the work that he does, particularly on the defensive side, is quite smart. He doesn't really get himself into those situations where he himself is beat. Um, he's more disruptive in that capacity. Emerson just got beat far too many times. Um, and he does have a tendency to pop up in the box too. Some of his late runs, we saw it just a couple games ago where he got a goal off of just an intelligent run into the box. So yeah, I like that a lot. Actually, that could have been interesting. It's unfortunate that we lost both of them at the same time. Um, Destiny and Oro, but yeah, that was rough. But the thing for me that I felt was most disappointing or was really lacking is that leadership. And that's where, it's difficult because we all know what Sun is capable of bringing, but the dude has come off a Asian international cup competition where he was playing 120-minute games, running himself into the ground. It's clear to me that he is tired and he's making mistakes. He's playing poor passes, loose passes. He's not really looking to see, what his next option is going to be. I honestly expected him to be pulled as one of the first subs to give like Werner a chance to get out there and to whip balls into Richarlison. When Richarlison's number came up, I was shocked. because
Same.
he was putting effort in. Like he was all over the place, helping out defensively and trying to get forward, holding things up. Richarlison's been much better at not flopping to the ground constantly. But the fact that Son, who's very clearly tired and needs a break, stayed out there for the full time, that to me was shocking. I would have thought that just hand the armband over to Romero, to Madison, somebody to inject that energy and urgency. I feel Romero in particular is a very vocal guy about like, just grin and bear it, get through it, push forward. Um, I would have liked to have seen that change personally. Disappointed. I not so much in the personnel that came on, because I do think going with that all-out offensive approach when we needed that goal is technically on paper the right move. I just don't know that in current form, having two players in Werner and Johnson coming in, where the finishing is a little bit suspect. Like, yes, Johnson scored pretty recently, but that's right place, right time. The rest of his play has been kind of subpar. Werner, assist machine. He's not really finding the goals though. And then to take off your big informed goal threat, it just, I don't know. That was rough. That was really rough. And I do think, like you said, it does show some of our deficiencies, yes, in the fullback, but also in a creative finisher. Having I said it once, I'm going to say it again. Having to keep Dane Scarlett due to him playing too many teams, for too many teams this year, and loaning out Valise kind of hurts, because I do think Valise would have been an interesting option to come on and try to poach a goal. Dane Scarlett clearly isn't there. Otherwise, he would have been on. Uh, and then there's just nobody else that I really trust up there. It's hard. And then you've got
I
the guys who are coming back from, like Basuma's first start. He had some moments where he looked fantastic, and then other moments where he just shut off and cost us a
yeah,
goal.
like when he gave the ball away
Yeah.
and instead of, I mean, he does give a little bit of effort to track back and try and take the ball back, but then he just disappears from the screen, um, leaving a man wide open in the middle. We knew going into this was going to be a tricky match. Like Wolves is for some reason is what they traditionally call like a bogey team. We can't figure out a way around a tricky match with Wolves. It's always gritty. It's always tricky. They love, and it doesn't seem to matter what kind of manager they have or who they have as a manager. They always find themselves playing this low block to mid low block, and it frustrates. And it's the same for Spurs, no matter which manager it's been in recent times. You haven't been able to find a Spurs team that can break down a team who plays in a low block type of a situation. We don't have those creative guys in the box like you had with a Delhi or with even a Christian Eriksen or somebody like that who can come into the box. Even you can shit on him all you want for his personal stuff, but Lucas Moura used to because he was a dribbly. So and that brings up the question, because I did, and I'm going to ask you, Wendy, what you think about this, because I did see Nathan that texted or tweeted about, or X'd or whatever they're calling it these days, about
No, it's
dribbly
Twitter.
wingers, and I was saying last week we do need a guy healthy. At least we have a guy who's not healthy right now in a manner Solomon, who he has his own deficiencies, but we need a Manor Solomon type, maybe someone who's a little better, and that maybe we'll be looking to that in the future. But I know Nathan did talk about having maybe two dribbly wingers, right?
Real quick, Mike. I one little point that I would contest. It's not that I don't think we are lacking the creative players to break something down. I do think Madison and Lo Celso have the ability to do that. Except
Right.
Madison is in poor form, having come back from injury and hasn't really found his groove. And Lo Celso is persistently injured and hasn't gotten a run out, so he has been incapable of
I would
inserting
I
that.
would
So
argue that
we've got
Madison still isn't
options.
healthy, but
It,
I would
it's
I would
just
argue that Madison's not healthy
he's
still.
not, right. We have the players who can do it. We just don't have them fit and ready to go. we're kind of forced to do it. And that's the unfortunate part, right? Like this is where I would have loved to see, you know, knowing that we don't have any other options, maybe this is the opportunity to see more of Donnelly, who I have personally been really impressed with his work rate in his few cameo appearances. But again, you know, he got to play in the U21 game instead, which ended up being kind of, from what I hear, a bit of a shit show. But I like the kid. I think he's got loads of potential, and I would love to see more of him, you know, get those 10, 15-minute runs out at the end of games
I
just to
think
see
he's
what
got
he
the
can do.
body, he's got the attitude, he's got the ability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
this is kind of what I'm getting at around Ange being quite conservative because I think, um, I think if you look at some of the other clubs around our position, I know there's a lot to play for, right? It's Champions League football on the line. It's big stakes. But I do think other managers would have involved Donnelly more, particularly during our injury crisis, where he was playing players kind of out of position. We didn't have Madison and we didn't have Lo Celso at the same time. The next profile that fits that role is Donnelly. The next player whose profile fits that role is Donnelly for sure. Um, I think he's got one of the best passing ranges at the club right now, to be honest. His work rate is incredible. He's creative. He's got the vision. He scores goals, and I think he should have been involved a bit more. And I would have liked to have seen him on the bench yesterday. To be honest, I think he would have been a really useful sub to bring on to kind of try and pick the lock. Um, Specifically on the dribbly winger points. Um, I think Nathan ultimately is absolutely right that we do need at least one dribbly winger who can beat his man one on one. We saw Kulusevski do that and ended with a goal. And that's kind of one of the routes to goal in these kind of matches where you have set defenses. They were playing essentially a back five and then a three midfield for a lot of the game, and it's hard. It's really hard to break that down. There's the distances between the defense and the midfield are so small that Madison can't get into pockets of space in between those lines, and we can't find him. So it's tough. And having someone who can beat their man off a standing start and get in behind or commit extra players pulls the team out of shape, and it's really useful. However, the point I would make is even without the dribbly winger option, with the players we have at our disposal, we should be able to beat Wolves were it not for things like injuries and I think fatigue, and in Son's case, he is drained mentally and physically. I thought he was actually quite poor in the last game when he came off the bench, and then of course he gets that assist in the last minute.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he's capable of his moments. Like that's why he's left on. That's why Ange doesn't take him off and takes Richarlison off instead, which I think was a mistake. But that's because of his name and his reputation rather than the reality of how he's playing. And he was
Exactly.
playing like a man who was a bit broken and needs a break. And it's not just Son, like you say, it's Madison. He's clearly rusty, is the gentle, kind of generous way of phrasing it, I think. Kulusevski's put in a tremendous workload this season. Sometimes, it's when you go to games, you see the way Kulusevski is manhandled constantly. He's such a big physical specimen. He like almost has players on his back at times, and he's just brute forcing his way through them. And he comes off the pitch, just like almost has to drag himself off the pitch. He looks so exhausted, and he's done that week after week after week after week. And I think it's really starting to show. And it was showing in Udogi, it was showing in Porro. This is a constant issue with the I think the workload that Ange has put on some of these players, and a lot of people say, they've only got one game a week, they shouldn't be tired. But I think it's very easy to say that when you're not playing one of the most intense styles of football in the Premier League. This what we're trying to do is so intense. It's such hard work, and our players aren't thoroughly accustomed to it yet. So it'll take some time, and we'll beef up the squad next year and hopefully see some more rotation and everything will be fine. But it was kind of just the perfect storm for this one, in my view.
Yeah, and it's
Like,
interesting, right? Because like it's not 6 days off either. They're going in for training, they're
yeah.
pushing in training too. Like we see a lot of the social media is focused on the good vibes and everybody getting along and everything. But you just know that when push comes to shove, Ange has them working hard in training because they need that fitness. They need to be
Mhm.
able to play in that style for 90 minutes. And yeah, it's definitely lacking because some of these players have been forced to do it way longer than maybe they should in ideal situations. It doesn't help that with the way that extra time has been played this year, we've seen like 7, 8, 9, 11, 12 minutes added on. It's just insane the number of minutes a lot of these guys are playing. And then you've got internationals that take that too. It's a lot for sure. But for me, what I really want to see them work on is, something that's a little bit more confidence building because there were opportunities in that game. We weren't lacking. We had at least 3 or 4 instances where we played quick, slick 1-2 touches through the box. And instead of just taking that first time shot, we had somebody who would take an extra touch or play that extra pass when you don't need to. And you can't test the goalkeeper if you're just trying to walk it in, right? You need to be able to go, I see the goal, I'm taking the shot. End of
I
story.
th I think that's a lot of the issue we see, with Kulusevski and Son for that matter. Son, a couple times where I know we both said at the same time, Steve, at one point was just like, shoot it. I say it to my son too, like,
Just shoot.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
there
you're
was that
playing,
one.
you're playing on the left wing, bring the ball across the front of the box and shoot from distance. If,
I think it was
usually there's going to be somebody there, at least a center forward who's going to be there, hopefully to sweep that up and tap it in the goal. And Kulisevsky was the same. We've been saying that for weeks and weeks. But Wendy's right. He's completely just. I'm going to use the word Dave. Dave said I was weirdo, but I'm going to use the word. He's just gassed with 2 Z's. He's out of fuel.
Yeah, Son in
But
particular.
you showed like he showed a little bit more of like that Decky that we fell in love with, right? That guy who's willing to take chances, that guy who's willing to beat somebody. But again, Wendy's right. Like he's he's being beat down, he's being leaned on, he's being pushed, he's being kicked, his ankles are being kicked out from underneath him. It's got to be hard when you're not scoring and you're not making those contributions that you used to making. He is such a big dude. He's not going to be one of those guys like who's going to be able to squirt through and get to the goal on a consistent basis. He's going to be the guy who's going to be doing the dirty work. And I'm sure he knows it. But the thing with Ange versus what we saw with the Italian terrorist is that the Italian terrorist went in and said, we're gonna get fit through running constantly, and Ange is doing it through, he's not forcing the guys to do wind sprints, right? He's out there putting them through the ringer and training, and that's how they're getting fit. They're getting fit through gameplay. They're getting fit through training, through practicing, versus doing wind sprints back and forth until they throw up. You know,
Yeah,
there's
Son
no
in
buckets on the
particular.
sidelines.
Yeah,
And
Son in
and
particular had that one moment. I think it was in the early in the second half where he cut onto his right foot, and instead of trying to take the shot when he had a little bit of space, went to make that pass. And it's like, buddy, what are you doing? You're in the box, you're on your right foot, just shoot the ball. But that's the thing, right? That's what we're seeing. Decky probably made the wrong choice in shooting when he had that overlap that was coming in. Richarlison at one point took an extra touch that he didn't need to. It's rough. And I get it. The interesting thing as you were talking that I was thinking about was how much funnier in a way it is when Johnson comes in and plays in that right wing spot in favor of Decky, and how much more Johnson ends up on the ground. Because you're
well,
right.
it's the
Like,
because the defensive tactics aren't changing because they've been working the entire game.
well, yeah, but also it's like, it's like Chris said, Decky almost puts guys on his back and just runs with them, bulldozes through. Johnson doesn't have that strength. So he gets hit, he's going down, and he's going down hard. It's just a different frame player, right? Like I would love to see Johnson use that pace a bit more to try to beat players, but I don't know if it's lack of confidence or what, but there's something going on where he just hesitates a little too long to be effective. Werner, considering his lack of goal scoring form, doesn't seem to lack the confidence, and I think that's why he's been able to pick up a few assists early on in his Spurs career. It's
Mhm.
it's just interesting to me to see how these different guys are playing. Uh, but yeah, that was a hugely disappointing game for sure. Um, but we've got, a long period until our next one, so hopefully we can bounce back. But before we get
Seems like a
into,
long time to wait, I gotta tell you.
I know, right? What
The
is it
only
like ten
upside,
ten days? Like
yeah, the only upside is maybe Poro and Udogi get fit for the next game.
That's the thing.
That's what I'm crossing my fingers for. But before we talk about what's coming up, there is one question that we typically ask around midway point, and I would love it, Chris, if you would ask Mike this very specific question. I know you
I
know where we're going.
I would love to ask the question.
Let's do it.
Hey, Mike, what you drinking?
You know what, Wendy? I love it when you ask that question. We've had a number. We like every one of our guests has kind of asked that question. Nobody asked it. Like Ricky was great at it, and he's the current champion of hey Mike, what you drinking? But it's extra special when you ask it. Today,
Fills him
um,
with the warm
again,
fuzzies.
I'm gonna try another sour. Okay. A
Godspeed.
few weeks ago, so on the X Rich Discord, I frequent the beer and booze thread, and it's a good room for me to stay in. But I was told that I have to
They've
keep
banned him
trying
from
sours.
everything else.
There was some great banter, on my lack of um, branching out into other beer styles. I felt like I was late to the party on the sour, so I'm back into it. I am going to drink a beer from a brewery in Vermont who specializes in sours. I think we did the Party Jam last year, the Blackberry Party
Oh
Jam.
yeah.
Um, this time, they've just put out like a whole bunch of different pale ales and India Pale Ale sours. So they're like heavily hopped sour ales. Now, Hermit Thrush specializes in kettle sours. Um, these these beers are sour during the brewing process in the brew kettles. Um, I'm really interested in this one. Um, so it has the rainbow wheel on it. We'll see the can has the rainbow wheel on it. Hermit Thrush is in Brattleboro, Vermont. Brattleboro, Vermont is a very progressive part of Vermont. There, and Hermit Thrush is uh they do a lot for the LGBTQ community. Um, and we appreciate them for that. Um,
It's a
this
great
is
spot. I've actually been there before. It's
yeah,
a really cool location.
they do have a nice little spot right in the middle of town. I used to live in Brattleboro, um, and we didn't frequent Hermit Thrush because it wasn't there when I was there. But there was a now defunct brewery called McNeil's that we went to all the time, and they had it was that brewery was an inside of an old firehouse, like an 1800s style firehouse. Um, and it smelled and looked like it too. But they had a red ale that was just outrageous, and they brewed it right there, like
Right in front of you.
on brew days. Yeah, on brew days, like they were there in the bar with you brewing the beer while you're sitting at the bar.
Yeah, it's a
Oh,
cool spot. But
that place was dirty, but
my buddy's family has a farm down in Brattleboro, so on occasion we'll get down there to visit. Yeah, and man, like this is when you started talking about sours, Mike, like, and I went on my little rant about how most of these like mainstream sours that are coming out are just like fruited beers that like aren't really sour. This is this is fucking sour. Like this is like I just sucked on a lemon sour. It's
yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's what you want, right?
exactly.
it's not just a Belgian style beer. It's not like any of the
This
French
is
style beers.
yeah, you're gonna
These
drink
are
this and pucker up. Like,
yeah.
no, it's
So
good, but they're
this
good.
straight off the top, it's a fizzy beer, soapy head. I've got it in my little
Is that a
my
Care Bears
favorite.
mug?
It's not a Care Bears. It is my Grateful Dead Dancing Bears mug.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Right.
a few of our friends know that I'm a Grateful Dead fan. But appearance straight off the top, dude, looks like a unfiltered IPA. It's very fizzy. Um, Yeah, and it smells like a Belgian triple almost. Like it's got that yeah, it's got that fermented at high temperatures kind of smell. Very yeasty. I know this is probably gonna turn my face inside out.
I can't
Um,
wait.
yeah, so this is actually brewed when was living down there, there was a place called Four Star Farms, and they were an organic farm, and they were trying to their initiative was kind of to bring local produce to the area, to the towns. And this was in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, where like the whole local stuff hadn't really caught on yet. They started making hops. Um and this is made with their hops, with the Four Star Farms hops. Um and they're right on the Connecticut River, and it's right near one of my favorite barbecue places ever. Anyway, let's get into this. I'm gonna take a sip.
Oh, I can't wait. Let's see what his face does. Ah.
This is an interesting beer. My wife is not going to enjoy this at all. Um, Amy is very much an IPA fan and a pale ale fan. Um, she does not like sours. This beer is really good. I can see myself drinking a lot of it. This beer is a perfect cross between an IPA and a sour. Um, it has that pucker, it has that taste, has that yeasty kind of quality that you get in a sour beer. The
Not to be confused with the Yeezy quality.
Yeezy, yes. I have a pair of Yeezys that I bought that are 9.5s that don't fit me. But I bought them as an investment because I thought I was going to become a sneakerhead at one point.
Oh no.
Fucking terrible. Um, so now they're just sitting in a box in my closet. Anyway, this beer is really good. It has all the qualities of a pale ale, that nice bitter bite, but at the same time, it's got that sour pucker that you really only get with certain types of beers. And like again, like I said, fermented at high temperatures and brewed with uh with a lot of yeast. So they use almost double the yeast, and it really comes through. It's not like those crazy fruited sours that you get. Um, so for a rating, again, we had a fruited sour a couple of weeks ago. I did not, I've discussed it before. I do not like mangoes.
I don't know how, but whatever.
I know. Um, I'm going to go ahead and give this one 4.1.
Oh, I didn't think you would go over four.
Steve. I did say
Man,
I'm gonna have more of these.
I
Amy would
know.
probably give it a 0.0. Um, she loves cucumbers, and she didn't even like that cucumber beer we did last year. But anyway,
Yeah, because it's
yeah.
cucumber beer. Like, what the? I've had one cucumber beer in my life, and it was probably the worst beer I've ever had in my life.
Yeah. I mean, I guess. So,
So let's look ahead, I guess. Oh no, you need a song. I'm not letting you off without a song.
okay. Um, let's go with easy enough. Easy enough. Sour Girl, Stone Temple Pilots,
Ah, because it's a sour. Ah,
because it's a
Dave's not
sour.
going to appreciate this.
No, it was too easy. Too easy. Dave, Sour Girl's
Kind
a
of
good
like
shout,
Dave.
though. Sour Girl's a good shout. It's a good band. Good shout.
Yeah, it is a good band. I'll give you that. All right,
I
so
I just wanted I wanted to let you move on, really.
that's Hermit Thrush. What was the name of this again?
River beer.
River Beer by Hermit Thrush.
It's a kettle sour pale ale.
4.1, great rating. Now we can look ahead. And it's been a little while since we've heard from our good friend Chris. So, Chris, we've got Crystal Palace coming up here at the start of March. It's another home game. How do you feel about that?
Well, now I've seen how the Wolves game went. I don't feel great about it because we're going to see exactly the same setup from Crystal Palace. I mean, even more rigid, knowing what Roy Hodgson's like and how he coaches his teams. The I believe I'm right in saying that Roy Hodgson literally tied string to his players in training to maintain the distances between the defense and the midfield, um, in practice and to get them used to what he expects from them on the pitch. So we're going to see pretty much the same defensive approach, I think.
Right.
Um, so a lot of patience is going to be required. I do think Porro and Udogi being back will change the shape of the game somewhat. And I will say, actually, I forgot to mention this before. We really miss Porro's set pieces. I know
Yes.
Madison is a decent enough set piece taker, but Porro elevates us a lot with his set pieces. He is really special from a dead ball, and that will help significantly, I think. So you know, maybe that does change the shape of the game. I think Ange needs to learn lessons as well. Don't repeat the same mistakes. Bringing Johnson on in a game where you need kind of quick feet and 1v1 abilities and don't have space to run in behind doesn't suit Johnson. That's not his game. He needs room to move into. The room wasn't there. Um, Werner, I think, is a little different. He's kind of, whilst I agree with you completely that his finishing is looking much like what we've been accustomed to with Timo Werner. There's some kind of sprightliness to his play that really adds something, I feel. Lots of give and goes, quick movement inside the defender. So he doesn't rely on the pace to get in behind. He will play quick 1-2s and then use his pace. And I think that is really effective and useful and actually something Johnson can learn from in the long run. So yeah, I think Ange needs to learn lessons. If Son's not working, get him off, get Werner on. If um I don't know, if we're not progressing the ball through midfield, be bold, bring on Lo Celso or maybe even Donnelly. Try things. Don't just wait for something to happen because we can't guarantee it will. But it will be a tough game against Palace for sure.
Absolutely. The thing that worries me most is looking at Palace's form in this calendar year. So far, since January, they've won one game, and it was a 3-2 win against Sheffield United. So, most people would be saying, wow, Crystal Palace is really poor right now. This is our chance. I look at this and say, wow, this is Spurs' opportunity to Spursy it up and really make people stressed out. But they also have two games between now and then. They've got Everton tomorrow. Next weekend, they've got Burnley. So those are probably going to be some interesting matches to watch if you want to check them out and see what Spurs might be getting into, particularly since we don't have a match next weekend. But yeah, I kind of feel the same way, right? Like it's going to be another difficult one. We're not really showing the capability of breaking down that sort of defensive side. I do think that we are going to see something a little bit different. And honestly, it probably will just be because at least one of Poro or Destiny will be fit enough to return, if not both of them. And if that's the only change that we get, that might just be enough, especially if it's Poro. If we can get Poro back there, I think that's a huge boost because his set piece delivery, not only is it superior from the corners, but it also enables us to move Madison to a more central position to pick up the second ball and then redistribute. I think we were lacking a lot of that against Wolves. And there's a lot to be said about winning that second ball and trying to play back into the box. And too often we were just missing out. We were having our pockets picked. Basuma in particular had the one that led to a goal. Yeah, we need a lot more stability centrally. And when we're taking some of our more creative central players and pulling them out to take corner kicks and whatnot, it makes things a lot more difficult. But yeah, I think I feel better about Crystal Palace than I did against Wolves, but not by much. I'm going to keep an eye and see how they perform, and I don't know, maybe after 10 days have passed, I'll feel more confident. But I think until we've had a solid run of form again, I'm just gonna feel a little bit awkward. And it's not for Ange, right? Like I felt uncomfortable with stretches under Mourinho, under Conte. Ange is different. Like I see what he's trying to do. I see that the players aren't really picking up on that in the way that they should because of what we've talked about, right? The fatigue, the getting beat up constantly, the lack of rotation, all that. So again, long rest against a team that is a good opportunity to show that we can do something against a defensive team. I don't know, Mike. What do you think? It's
So the
not.
way that so the way that Wolves played us is kind of like the blueprint now, right?
It
It
was just
seems
without Vicario, but
yeah, right, yeah. So I mean, it's that's kind of the blueprint now. And Ange told us in the beginning that these things are going to happen with the way that his system works. And my only fear for that Crystal Palace game is the way that Eze and Elise play. If they're both healthy, both on the field together at the same time, that it's they we saw Neto take advantage of that, like um, and we didn't really get to see Matoma like full strength because he just came back, but like a player like that would have taken advantage of it too at Brighton. Um, but I think that if we're going to sit back and rely on Mickey's pace and and Romero's ability to defend in the box, we have to really make sure we get Poro and Udogi back because we can't just keep relying on these guys and keep relying on these guys because it's going to wear them out and eventually that's going to lead to disaster. So if that's the blueprint is sitting back in a low block or a mid low block and just hope to intercept the ball in the midfield and pop it over the top to a fast guy, then we're gonna end up eventually getting just decimated and just destroyed. Um, that said, I think that given the amount of time that we have, there's going to be some changes that are made. I think we're already starting to like make changes in those defensive set pieces around Vicario. You saw you saw Madison get into the mix, and you saw actually Emerson body up dudes in the box too. You know, Problem is when you do that, you leave somebody open right in the middle of the box, and that happens, and that did happen. I think Crystal Palace is in a bad spot. Roy Hodgson just went into the hospital, um, and I think the Guardian just said he's expected to step down for Glasner. So, like, if that happens, who knows? They might get a new manager bounce. I don't know. I don't know what to expect from this game. I expect that Spurs with some extended quote unquote rest. We already talked about that, but with some extended rest, uh, could could come back and put a stamp back on things and say, "Hey, we're back. We got our guys healthy, and this is where we're going to go." And it could be an amazing game. I'm going to be down at Boston Spurs for that, as I'm going to watch my MLS club probably lose their home opener. So the next day. So I'll be down at Boston Spurs to watch that game.
love the optimism, Mike.
I
Just,
know it's just, I don't have Dave here to put me in check. So
and I'm not going to do it because that seems like a lot of work, and
it
that's
does.
it's
It
not what I'm
does.
about.
No,
Um,
I think we can win that match and we should. We should win it pretty easily, but we are Spurs. So the thing
Nothing's
is we all
easy.
have
We
to
have to
we
make
have
it
to keep
hard.
in the back of our mind that we have this is a project, and it's going to take time. And Ange assured us he ain't going anywhere. So
You know what?
It's a compliment that teams approach us like this, isn't it? That
yeah,
they
I think it
want to
is.
play in the low block. They know that if they don't do that, we will take them apart. So I think it's a sign that teams are threatened by us.
Yeah, and
Agreed.
frankly, kudos to Ange because I think the one thing that we don't really talk about enough is how he handles the media pressure. We all know how some of these journalists can be ruthless going after him. But every single time I see him interviewing, whether it's through, just the post match interviews, or if it's off with a different news organization. He's always the same, level-headed, calm, collected, whether we win, lose, draw. You get the same, it's the same message. Nothing changes. Nobody's getting thrown under the bus. It's always, this is my way. We're going to do it. I'm responsible. And to me, that's refreshing, right? I love how we've got a coach who accepts that he's the guy picking the team. He's the one who's making the changes. He's the one who's responsible for getting the most out of these players. And, taking some of that pressure off of the guys should, in theory, open them up to be a little bit more risky, let them play a little bit more open. And then when it doesn't happen, it's his responsibility to recognize that and, make some of the hard calls. And by and large, I think we have seen that more often than not this season, with some players being left on the bench. You could argue that pulling Benton Kerr and having him on the bench so quickly after coming back is a slap in the face, given, oh, well, he pushed himself hard to get there, but we've all seen that he was lacking. And Ange saw it too, and Basuma gets the nod. But so it's not that he can't or won't, it's that can he do it to your captain when it counts, right? So, he's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but he is a breath of fresh air. And I absolutely am willing to give him as much grace as possible. If he goes the entire contract playing this exact same way and nothing changes, I still think it's a net positive, because it at least shows that, we're doing the right things. We're playing the way that is exciting and entertaining more often than not for us. It's I don't know. It's fun. It's fun for a change. So I'll take it. Kudos to Ange. Um, Chris, I'm going to ask you this one last question before we get to closing thoughts, because I am curious. From your perspective, as somebody who's actually over there and in the thick of it, do you get a similar sort of vibe from the fan base, overseas, where, you're more local, it's more close to home for you? Like, are we just making things up? Like, everybody loves Ange, but it's just because we're so far removed physically. What's the sentiment like over there?
There's definitely so I would say broadly everyone loves Ange, and then you get the odd dissenting voice. So some people just cannot get their heads around the concept of the goalkeeper playing a short pass out to the centre back and the centre back playing it back to the goalkeeper. They're too nervous. They're there in the stadium watching. It's too hard for them to deal with the ball being that close to the goal through our own choosing. They just want to see it pumped forward, and they can't deal with the sort of patient approach to kind of try and create spaces and wait for the opposition to come out. So you do get the odd dissenting voice. Just mainly just shouting, play it forward or something inane like that. Um, and I would say, I don't know about you guys, but I've noticed on social media there is definitely a lot more negativity starting to creep in. And I think that has coincided with, all of the injuries, the African Cup of Nations, the Asian Games. This stuff has hampered the team to a pretty prominent degree, and I think it's understandable that the performances have dropped, and people just need to have some perspective and wait it out and see what happens, because we've got good players, we've got a great coach. We should end the season strongly, I think. And people are getting ahead of themselves. But yeah, broadly speaking, in the stadium, people love Ange, and his name is sung from the first minutes of a last.
Excellent, excellent. Love to hear it. All right, well, it is getting close to that time. So how about we touch on some closing thoughts? Mike, you want to start us off there?
I think I mentioned, and this is not Spurs related. It is, I mentioned that March 2nd, I'm going to be heading down to Boston Spurs to watch that match there, the Crystal Palace match. But on the 3rd, I'm going to go see my New England Revolution play their home opener. And we have a new coach. Bruce Arena is gone. Thank God. We we re-signed Tajon Buchanan, which is huge. He's an amazing young player, which I don't see staying in America much longer. But we'll love him while he's here. But I just wanted to touch a little bit on the state of U.S. soccer. because of not because of the way that I see the youth game um organized, but more the amateur and lower leagues being kind of exploited by MLS. The US Open Cup is coming up. It's if you want to relate it to anything, it's similar to the FA Cup in that we have a number of amateur teams who are non-league. Our very own Vermont Green FC will be playing in that for the first year this year, previous to their third season in existence, which is a testament to what they're doing, what our founders and owners are doing. But we have a new league that came in and immediately got all nine of their teams admitted, and they're an amateur league. Immediately got all nine of their teams admitted, and because of the fact that they're unstructured, um, we don't know yet. The tournament starts on the 18th of March. We don't know yet at Vermont Green who we will be playing. We don't know whether we have a home or away match. Like this is a big deal, and it's mostly because MLS refuses to play nice with the rest of the lower leagues. Um, they refused the USL Championship for promotion and relegation system. Um, they refused the USL for women's teams. And it's just kind of emblematic of what's happening in the U.S. Soccer Federation versus USA Soccer. Um, Very, very disorganized. And I know that we have a number of European players and English players on the Vermont Green that I've spoken to um, on my other podcast. Um, and as much as our players are catching up without a valid system in this country, we're never going to see the US catch up to the European leagues. And that's going to hurt us in the long run, especially with the World Cup coming up in North America. And it's really sad to see because we have so many good young players that are coming up through, even down to the U14 teams that are coming up through. I've seen it a number of tournaments, U12 kids, U14 kids, U16 kids. There are a lot of really, really good players coming up, and they're not being given the advantages that they could have in a European system where there is promotion and relegation. There are youth academies that are not pay to play, and I think U.S. soccer is really falling behind, and they're going to destroy soccer in this country, and it's a sad thing for me.
Yeah, my closing thought, I'll just piggyback off that briefly, because we do have the World Cup in 2 years coming here, right? Canada, US, Mexico, all coming together. Um, that is the perfect opportunity uh, to get kids hyped about it, to get people more interested in the sport, to really elevate it above and beyond some of the other sports in the country that are a little bit faltering. Um, but you're absolutely right. The disorganization is going to hurt. It's going to make it so that, some of the kids who might want to see a World Cup match or get interested in soccer, they're going to be priced out of it because, all the best clubs you got to pay way too much to be a part of. And I did coaching in the fall for the rec program, so it was relatively low cost. And, I knew what I was doing. My team went undefeated because the other coaches really didn't. It's like somebody's grandpa who's volunteering to help out, or mom or dad who doesn't really know much about soccer, but like their kids in it, so they're going to, do their best. And, a lot of these kids, they're good kids, they've got talent, they want to be there, or they want to do it. Um, but there is a huge disparity between those who get to pay for the club soccer in the off seasons versus those who are just picking it up because it's a rec program activity and it's cost effective for them. And when it comes to coaching, that's another thing, right? A lot of us, especially volunteers who are just doing it for fun, it's my belief that it is crucial to let these kids know as they're playing that it does. I don't care if you have a club team. I don't care if your parents are able to send you to, whatever premier organizations around. When you're playing on this team, everybody is playing equally. And so if somebody next to you can't do the same sort of skill thing that you can, why don't you show them how to do it? Walk them through it, advocate, lift everybody up around you. But unfortunately, we're in this position where as a society we don't really want to lift people up. We want to be the best and only the best. And at some point it does hurt. You're not giving the opportunity to players to let players develop who can't. You hear about like Richarlison, for example, playing on the streets in rural Brazil and not really, he walked into an opportunity and does a lot of giving back because he knows how important it is. Doesn't really happen all too much here. And it's unfortunate because like where I grew up in New Jersey, I knew a lot of kids who were really good, really talented, didn't get to play because they couldn't afford it.
We have a number of kids in our club, and I am part of the problem because I am doing the pay to play system, and I could tell you, Steve, that like we spend well over $4,000 to $5,000 a year, uh, and that's including with travel and tournaments and that kind of stuff. Um, what I also do because I am able to, because my job and my life situation allows me to, is I donate to that scholarship program that we have at the club. Um, and I know that a couple other clubs do the same. We have Vermont Patriots who we have a large Somali population, so we allow them to come, and they're allowed to come and play for free. Um, and Burlington Football Club also does the same type of a thing. They no matter the cost, no matter your ability to pay, they allow kids to play. So I think that's a good thing. Steve did have to drop off, but I'm going to ask Wendy for his kind of final thoughts, and then we'll close it out here with the final words.
I found that really fascinating to hear about the youth soccer and talk about the upcoming World Cup. I did part of me feel the inevitable looming civil war that's about to happen in the US will make all of this seem like a blip um,
Yeah.
in the rear view mirror, I guess, at some point. But really, genuinely, really interesting. And actually, if I sort of carry on the theme of talking about youth football, I think not only did we have a lot to be excited about at Spurs in terms of the first team with Ange and the kind of project that he's working on, but our current under 18s are the best group of under 18 players I've seen for quite some time at Spurs, and I'm very, very excited about several of them. I think people have heard a lot about Mikey Moore for good reason. He's ridiculously skillful. Um, Scores lots of goals, is incredible at dribbling, so scores kind of goals that are really eye-catching. But there are two other players that I think are on that level also. So Tyrese Hall, who is a central midfield player, who is a brilliant ball carrier from deep and has just stepped up to the under 21s to make his first couple of starts. He is fantastic and definitely one to watch. And the other one is Leo Black, who plays the inverted right back role for the under 18s, which I am very much enjoying. He was a central midfield player, so it kind of explains, I guess, why I'm suggesting that central midfield players can play this role in Ange's system. Um, Brilliant player, really talented. Reminds me a little bit of Walker Peters, but I'd say he has a bit more control in midfield. He's kind of Walker Peters would sometimes overcommit in a really exciting way, but it would kind of catch us out defensively. Leo Black's a bit more calm, a bit more controlled, and a bit more patient. And yeah, definitely another player to watch. So loads to be excited about with Spurs' future.
Awesome. I always love to hear you talk about the youth system at Spurs because not a lot of people do. I will shout out the N17 Women podcast too because um, you know, I talked to Caroline a little bit online, and we have some stuff to talk about because my daughter's becoming interested in Spurs now too. She's a Brennan Johnson fan. Just forgive her for now, but she we buy the membership to Spurs Play because we get to watch some of those youth games. We actually get to watch some of the women's matches, and it's fantastic. And um, having people like Caroline out there to kind of guide us through the women's game too, really is really exciting. So we have people who are voices for those for the younger academy teams and the women's teams. So I love that about and I love that about you guys. So it's always nice to hear you talk about that because I know your face lights up when you talk about the youth football and it's amazing. Um, but as we leave here tonight, I want to thank Wendy for coming on again. Um, we'll as soon as the finance department approves the jackets, we'll send them out to you and Brian from Rhode Island, and you know we'd love to have you on again. And I'm sure we'll be in contact about that. But as we leave, Steve would always say, "Don't be an asshole," and he would also say, "Coys, coys, 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 coys." And for me, I just love to say, guys, it's a crazy world out there. When you just mentioned the coming civil war that might be happening in the United States, uh, you know, don't get too far into the politics and all that shit that happens around us. Live your lives, try and be happy, and try and make other people happy, and just be safe out there. And I sometimes forget, and Dave has to remind me.